जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना। 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 यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यमुना तीर वनचारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपद परमहंस प्रभुजिगाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद श्रील भाई चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। Don't need it. नामाचार्य श्रील ठाकुर हरिदास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन बीबीथी संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। गौ प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णे स्वधामोपगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह कलौ नष्टदृशामेष पुराणार्को धुनोदितः Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, text number 8. And we'll go on and read until, I think, text number 11 today. Is it? Or 10? I think 10. So we'll begin with text number 8. Yeah. This is the beginning of Prahlad's prayers to Lord Narasimhadev. Wonderful section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Very favorite. So hopefully this microphone will cooperate. It's like devotees, you don't really notice that you're slipping. It's very slow, very imperceptible, but it's happening. And then, yeah, maybe. Okay. All right, so Shri Prahlad Uvacha Brahma Adayah Suraganaha Muniyah Atha Siddhaha Sattva Ekatana Gatayah Vajasam Pravahaihi Na Aradhitum Purugunair Adhuna Api Pipruho Kim Toshtum Arhati Sab Me Harihi Ugrajatehe Shri Prahladuvacha Brahmadaya Suragana Manayotha Siddhaha Satvaikatana Gatayo Vajasam Pravahaihi Naradhitum Purugunair Adhuna Pipiprohom Kim Toshtumarhati Same Harirugrajate Brahmadaya Suragana Munayotha Siddhaha Tatvaikatana Gatayo Vajasam Pravahaihi Naradhitum Purugunair Adhuna Pipiprohom Kim Toshtumarhati Same Harirugrajate Brahmadaya Suragana Munayotha Siddhaha Tatvaikatana Gatayo Vajasam Pravahaihi Naradhitum Purugunair Adhuna Pipiproho Kim Toshtumarhati Same Harirugrajatehi Brahmadaya Suragana Manayotha Siddhaha Kaikatana Gatayo Vajasam Pravahaihi Naradhitam Purugunair Api Vitpruho Kim Toshtumarhati Same Harirugrajatehe Sri Prahladruvacha Brahmadaya Suraguna Punayokta Siddhaha Tatvaikathanagatayo Vachasam Pravahaihi Naradhitum Purugunair Dhunapi Piproho Kim Toshtamarhati Same Hare Grukrajate. You know what I just realized? I think I was told to chant text 10, right? Or anyway, oh yeah. So I'm just going to read the translations then and we'll go on. We have Prahlad Maharaj prayed, "How is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words, although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness. Then what is to be said of me? I'm not at all qualified." Please repeat. Well, no, we'll just read. Purport: a Vaishnava who is fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. For example, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, "Jagai madhai haite moishe papishto, purisher kita haite moishe logishto." Thus he considers himself unqualified, lower than the worms in stool, and more sinful than Jagai Madhai. A pure Vaishnava actually thinks of himself in this way. Similarly, although Prahlad Maharaj was a pure, exalted Vaishnava, he thought himself most unqualified to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. Mahajano yena gatassa pantha. For every pure Vaishnava should think like this. One should not be falsely proud of his Vaishnava qualifications. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore instructed us, Tranarapi sunichena tarovir ivasihishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadaharihi. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree. Devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Om Ajnana Timarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Mukam Karoli Vachalam Pangam Lankhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. This is something we see again and again and again, particularly in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. He's really conscious of his birth. We're not. He is. That's the difference. One difference, at least. And here we have a kind of like a periodic sentence. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Sometimes the things that Srila Prabhupada says are really understated. This is one of those things. Okay, the commentaries are very vast, but we don't have much time. I can share what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, because he usually sums up everyone else. "O remarkable Lord, it is hard to understand what quality you see in me, that you are so merciful. Possessing sattva is not the cause of your mercy." That is to say, if somebody's sattvic, that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get Krishna's mercy. What then to speak of a person possessing tamas? The devatas and sages' minds are completely immersed in sattvic dharma, jnana, and austerity. We are immersed in adharma, ajnana, and material enjoyment. Ekatana means exclusive tendency, according to Amara Kosh, that's a dictionary. And simply praising you is not a cause of your mercy. Simply praising you is not a cause of your mercy. They praised you with streams of words, which were fresh, cool, sweet, and pure like water, and which were embellished with ornaments and literary suggestions, purugunaihi. But they were not able to make you satisfied with them, aradhayatum. You are satisfied with me, though I'm born in a family possessing great tamas, ugrajatehe. This word ugrajati means from an ugly womb. This is Prahlad's great qualification. Okay, text 9. Manye dhanabhijana rupa tapashrutau jasteja prabhava balapaurusha buddhi yogaha narathanaya hi bhavanti parasya pungso bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gajayuthapaya. Prahlad Maharaj continued, one may possess wealth, an aristocratic family, beauty, austerity, education, sensory expertise, luster, influence, physical strength, diligence, intelligence, and mystic yogic power. But I think that by all these qualifications, one cannot satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, one can satisfy the Lord simply by devotional service. Gajendra did this, and thus the Lord was satisfied with him. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. No kind of material qualification is the means for satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service can the Lord be known. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. Unless the Lord is pleased by the service of a devotee, the Lord does not reveal himself. Naham prakashaha sarvasya yogamaya samavrataha. This is the verdict of all Shastras. Neither by speculation nor by material qualifications can one understand or approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is pretty much the list of what we're interested in, isn't it? Wealth, aristocratic family, intelligence, health. That becomes really relevant the older you get. And, all these things. Prestige, career, adi. And the irony is that it seems like sometimes these things do allow us to gain the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Who can tell me of an example of that? Ambarish Maharaj, okay. What was his material qualification by which he preached? Yet he gave it all up, right? So renunciation. Or Vasudev was honest, right? How so? Yeah, he lived by his word, and everybody knew that. He said, I'm going to give you all my children, even though I know you're going to kill them. And he kept that word. Can you do that? We can't even keep our vows. So Vasudeva appeared to please the Lord by his honesty, by his, integrity. Who else? So many of them. There are the many. Okay? I was thinking Pratap Rudra Maharaj himself, because by his humility he's sweeping the cart in front of Jagannath. It's been said by Vallabhacharya, for what his opinion is worth, that there's really no means to gain the mercy of God, but if there is a means, it's humility. So that's why we have to appreciate Prahlad's humility. He's not thinking, hey, I'm a Mahajan, give me some space. Or, whatever we would do. He's thinking, I'm just, I'm such a sinful rascal. And Prabhupada gives the example of Krishnadas Kaviraj. And they believe these things. We don't believe it. We only say it. Anyway, so, these are a few things we can consider here. Now, text 10. Vipra dvishadguna yutadara vindanabha. Do we have it? Yeah, go ahead. Padada vinda vimukhat shwapacham varishtham. Manye tadarpita mano vachanet hitartha. Pranam punati sakulam natu purimanaha. Viprat, then a Brahmana. Dvishat guna yatat, qualified with 12 Brahminical qualities. Aravindanabha, Lord Vishnu, who has a lotus growing from his navel. Pada Aravinda, to the lotus feet of the Lord. Vimukhat, not interested in devotional service. Shwapacham, one born in a low family, or a dog eater. Shwapacha. Anybody know what it means literally? Shwapacha. Shwam pachati. Yeah, no, he cooks dogs. He cooks dogs. Know anybody who cooks dogs? If you live in China, you will. They had to watch everybody's, every neighbor had to really watch out for their dog during COVID because people were stealing dogs and eating them. So that's called shwapacha. Yeah, lowborn. By extension, but logically it means lowborn. Vadishtam, more glorious. Manye, I consider. Tad arpita, surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Manaha, his mind. Vachana, words. Ihita, every endeavor. Literally means everything you want to do, because you can't get what you want unless you endeavor. Iha means desire. Artha, wealth. Pranam, and life. Punati, purifies. Saha, he, the devotee. Kulam, his family. Na, not. To, but. Bhurimanaha, one who falsely thinks himself to be in a prestigious position. Bhuri means vast, great. So he thinks he's big. Bhurimana, he has the pride of being a big gun, so to speak. All right, so if a Brahmana has all 12 of the Brahminical qualifications, parentheses, as they are stated in the book called Sanat Sajata, and parentheses, but is not a devotee and is averse to the lotus feet of the Lord, he is certainly lower than a devotee who is a dog eater, but who has dedicated everything, mind, words, activities, wealth, and life, all the things we mentioned above, in other words, to the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee is better than a Brahmana because the devotee can purify his whole family, whereas the so-called Brahmana in a position of false prestige cannot even purify himself. Purport. Here is a statement by Prahlad Maharaj, one of the 12 authorities, regarding the distinction between a devotee and a Brahmana expert in karma kanda, or Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. There are 4 varnas and 4 ashramas which divide human society, but the central principle is to become a first-class pure devotee. That's the purpose of everything. And here's another example of how we can please the Lord by mundane qualifications, apparently. Here the word is used to tosha. He was able to please the Lord. And in the Vishnu Purana, we hear a famous verse. Context is also significant. Sagar Maharaj approached his guru, Aurava Muni, and asked him, I'm responsible for all these prajas. How am I going to make all these people Krishna conscious? Aurava Muni replied, Varnashrama charavata purushena parapuman Vishnur aradhite pungsam nanyat tattosha karanam. He even says, there is no other way to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here we're hearing that there is no way to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by anything material, including Varnashram. How do we reconcile this? I-30. Take I-30, go up 35E, and just keep going, right? We did this last night. And you get to Aubrey, Texas, where there's a lot of hungry people, and nobody pays them much attention. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you know, they need association. We went there last night. They were very happy to get some program. But you can't get on I-30 unless you take the feeder road, correct? You got to go down Gurley Avenue, and you know, that's the way you do it. So there is no way to get to the program without going down Gurley Avenue, if you're coming from the temple at least. Similarly, the Vishnu Purana, Parashar Muni, Vyasdev's father, mind you, he says there is no way to please the Lord except through Varnashram, and it's not untrue. At the same time, Varnashram is a mundane function of pure devotional service. Sometimes, you know, we use these things in Krishna service. Not sometimes, all the time. Because there's no such thing as pure theory in action. Once it's in action, it's no longer pure theory. It's applied. And if you're a Mayavadi without any interest in devotional service, then the only way you can apply your theory is by becoming mundane again, which is exactly what they do. They open hospitals, they do an eye camp or something, this and that. But devotional service, although it is external, it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says bahya in regards to Varnashram in particular. Although it's external, still it's completely spiritual when it's offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. How do we know this? What's one reference from Bhagavad Gita that proves this? Chapter 4, I'm giving you a hint. Brahmarpanam brahma havir brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. There Krishna says, whatever the ghee you're offering in the sacrifice, the fire of the sacrifice, the grains you're offering in sacrifice, the huti itself, everything is spiritual when it's offered to the Supreme Lord. But ghee is mundane. Grains are also mundane. We have no access to devotional service except through the use of mundane things. But when we do engage those things in devotional service, they're no longer mundane. Just like a pure devotee, his body is not considered to be mundane. That's why we don't burn a pure devotee's body. We give him samadhi. Because his body purifies the earth. Red hot iron rod. This is the idea. All right. So we're talking about mundane qualifications and how you cannot please the Lord by these things. There's a good deal of purport here, which we can read, but we should note this, that, I'll just continue. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Here is a statement by Prahlad Maharaj, one of the 12 authorities, regarding the distinction between a devotee and a Brahmin expert in karma, kanda, or Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, because that Brahmin is not a devotee. If he's a Vaishnava, then it's okay. There are 4 varnas and 4 ashramas which divide human society, but the central principle is to become a first-class pure devotee. It is said in Hari Bhakti Sudhodoy, Bhagavad Bhaktihinasya jatihi shastram japas tapaha apranasya dehasya mandanam lokaranjanam. If one is born in a high family, like that of a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya, but is not a devotee of the Lord, all his good qualifications as a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya are null and void. Indeed, they're considered decorations of a dead body. You know what Vishnupuri says about this? Who is Vishnupuri? Vishnupuri. Anybody heard this name? He's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, if I'm not mistaken. He was an elder associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he wrote a verse which Rupa Goswami includes in his Padyavali. That verse says, even if you're the most sinful person on the face of this earth, once you devote everything you have to Krishna, then you're completely stainless, untouched by any sinful reaction, purest of the pure. And on the other hand, even if you've never done anything wrong in your entire life, you have a spotless karmic record, and none of us is in that category. He said, then, he's committed every sin in the book if he's a non-devotee. It sounds like pure fanaticism, does it not? It's kind of like, when I first read that verse, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana, ityadi, then, I thought, yeah, this is like so, sectarian and narrow and hateful, and but actually it's not so. There's a science to this. And a person who is completely surrendered becomes freed from karmic reactions. That is the fact. And then he goes on to say, Prabhupada goes on to say, in this verse, Prahlad Maharaj speaks of the Vipras, the learned Brahmanas. Janmana jayate Shudra. By birth, default, everyone is a Shudra. By default, in Kali Yuga at least. Kalau Shudra Sambhava. Parantu. What is the next line? Samskare tu bhavet dvijaha. By samskara, that is to say, these 13 samskaras that we perform and all the activities that purify our mundane existence, because you can't really purify spiritual existence. Spiritual existence is already pure. What you're going to purify in samskara, or refine, is your mundane existence. And that can be very subtle also. We can't get into that at the moment, but Sanskrita, just like you have prakrita. What does prakrita mean? Natural, wild, uncultivated. It's like a lawn. You let it grow on your front lawn and it looks ugly, and uncultivated, unrefined, prakrita. Languages can be like this. We have Prakrit languages. And then we have the Sanskrit language, and Sanskrit means it's been purified, it's been refined. So from samskara, we become Samskrita, and a whole collection of such persons is called Sanskriti, culture. All right, so, but here he's saying that even if you're born in a high family and you have all the culture in the world, but if you don't surrender at that point, you have to keep reinvesting in God. This is the point. We were discussing this in, where were we? San Jose the other day. And from chapter 17, texts 1 through 4 or 5, Krishna talks about faith. There are 2 kinds of faith. You can have swabhavaja shraddha, that is the faith that is born of your nature, whatever that may be in this world. And that's what Prahlad is afraid of in these verses. He's thinking, hey, I've got ugra jati, so I must have ugra faith as well. But it's not like that in his case. He's special. But it is like that in our case. So, Shastra Janya Shraddha is the other kind of faith that Baladev Vidyabhushan addresses in his commentary. He says, that only comes when you invest your volition in satsanga, sadhu sangha, and you undergo the rigors of sadhana bhakti. You follow all the Vaidhi sadhanas that are given in the nectar of devotion, and you become purified. The point we were making is that a car can still run if the gas tank is empty, If there's some fumes in there, it will go for some time. And this is what it's like when Indians come to America. A lot of you are Indians, so I'm reminding you. You know, you have to keep reinvesting. You have to put something in the gas tank again. It's not enough just to go by what you think you are or what you think you know or what you've brought with you to this planet. You don't reinvest in the process of samskaranam. And then you will be taken down by the modes of nature because it always happens. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. So you have to put money back into this process to continue the process of purification. So Brahman is the best among the divisions of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, but a devotee born in a low Chandala family is better than such Brahmanas, not to speak of the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and others. A devotee is better than anyone, for he is in the transcendental position on the Brahman platform. We've discussed already, you can't have pure theory in this world, and you do have to act in this world. Krishna says that, right? Anybody know the verse? Sharira yatrapi chatena prasiddhera karmanaha. You can't be successful in any endeavor. There is no endeavor that is purely theoretical. You have to get practical. And once it's understood that you have to be practical in this world, then you recognize, if you're intelligent, that there's no way to do that without becoming contaminated, at least by sattva guna. So you have to offer everything to Krishna. Yajñarthat karmanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana. Krishna says it himself in Bhagavad Gita. Unless you give everything in yajna for the Supreme Lord, you will be polluted by your activities. So that's why we can't stay on the Brahman platform forever. We have to come down to mundane level, or we graduate and go to devotional service, and that's the point here. That is why Prabhupada says a devotee is better than anyone, for he is in the transcendental position on the Brahman platform. Mam cha yova bhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sugunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service and who does not fall down in any circumstance at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. That's from 14.26 in Bhagavad Gita. The 12 qualities of a first-class Brahmana. Because what is a Brahmana? We said already, Janmana jayate Shudra. By birth, your default option is if you do nothing, you're a Shudra, period. But sanskara tu bhavet dvijaha, you can become a dvija. This has been mentioned in today's verse. Dvija means twice born, by taking initiation, Brahma Gayatri. And Veda Parhad Bhavet Vipraha, now we're talking about Vipras, learned person. You can do that by study of the Shastra. But when can you actually be called a Brahmana? Brahma janati iti brahmanaha. If you realize Brahman. And we've talked about how to realize Brahman. Theoretically, you can have some realization, but you can't hold it. Only way to do that is to graduate to the higher level of Brahmana activity, which we've described in chapter 4, text 24, quoted already. So that is devotional service, in other words. Now, beginning with Madhvacharya, all the commentators in our whole line of every disciplic succession, practically speaking, they're quoting this verse from Sanat Sujata, which is why it's mentioned in Prabhupada's translation. Jnanam cha satyam cha damah shrutam cha hyamat sarjam hris titikshana suya yajñascha danam cha dhritish samascha mahavrata dvadasha brahmanasya. The 12 great vows of a Brahmana. What are they? For those of you who have taken second initiation, for anyone interested in second initiation, you have to have knowledge, jnanam. Jnanam doesn't really mean knowledge, although it's an easy way to translate that word. Actually, a more literal translation of jnana means awareness. Awareness of more than the next guy. That's called knowledge also. So jnanam cha satyam, and you have to be truthful. And where does truth begin? With whom? Yourself. You have to be true to yourself. And Dhamma. What does Dhamma mean? Restraint. The senses want to do something, but I'm not going to let my senses do what they want because I have intelligence. That is what distinguishes us from animals. Go. Why do we call the senses go? I was in Nathdwara. Some of you know Arjuna, my godbrother, used to live here. So we visited Nathdwara once, and we bought a big tray of Mahaprasada, maybe 2 foot wide tray of every kind of wonderful things offered to Srinathji. So then there was a little chowk, there was a little like a marketplace there and some tables and chairs. We sat down and we were just about to, as they say in England, tuck in. And then suddenly our table appeared to explode and everything just, we fell backwards and the chairs, everything knocked over and what's happening? What happened is that a big hungry cow saw what we were doing and we were unguarded, just like sometimes when the inexperienced persons go to Vrindavan. You know, I'm just relishing the freedom here in the USA because I can wear my glasses without carrying a stick. And I can go outside carrying a bag of prasadam and it's no problem at all. But, you know, it's a different thing in Vrindavan. And even in Nathdwara, you've got to watch out for the cows because what does she do? She just pushed her nose right into the whole thing and quaffed everything within a few moments. Done. Ho gaya. So this is why the senses are called go. And Bilvamangala Thakur even prays in a wonderful verse. He says, I can't remember. Vacharya gochare kim madiyam. Anyway, I can't remember. But he says, my dear Lord, you please herd my cows into your pasture. You understand? Certainly you can see these cows are straying off the path. And who can imagine that somebody who's known as Gopal would ever, you know, be derelict in his duty of neglecting the cows when they're wandering off? The purpose of a cowherd boy is to collect the cows. So, you know, please help me out. A nice prayer from Bilvamangala Thakur. So that's called Dhamma. And Shrutam cha, you have to have learning. You have to have, that's different than awareness. Awareness actually means increased consciousness. It's not exactly the same thing as knowledge. It means more consciousness, more conscious. Tamal Krishna Goswami, you know, he used to say, before you become Krishna conscious, you have to first become conscious. So, Jnanam cha satyam cha dhamma shrutam cha hi amatsaryam. You have to be non-envious if you're a Brahmana. You can't be passionate like the other people. You can't do that. Hris, you have to be gentle. Titiksha, you have to exercise tolerance. So what did we hear already in the previous verse? More tolerant than a tree. I always give this example in Los Angeles. ISKCON temple, we have so many magnolia trees growing out in front. One day I'm looking at these trees and meditating on this verse and just thinking, I counted. There are 32 scars on that tree where that tree has donated one of its limbs to the city of Los Angeles, big orange trucks that come by and cut them down every once in a while. 32 times this tree has been slaughtered like that. If somebody cut off your arm, how would you feel? Why do you think the trees feel any less pain? But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says they don't protest. So that's called titiksha. And anasuya, I mean, the distinction between amatsarya and anasuya is something maybe subtle. I would have to look this up and see, actually. But yajñascha, you have to be always engaged in sacrifice. Just like, anyway, devotees are engaged in sacrifice. Dhanam, don't forget charity. Your money, all of your assets, it's actually meant to be enjoyed by the brahmacharis and the sannyasis. Bhagavatam 11th canto says this. And dhriti, what does dhriti mean? Yeah, you're solid. Nishtha, you're not going to give up. And shamascha, that means you're peaceful. Even if you can do all these other things, to also have a peaceful mind, that's the fruit of no small endeavor. These things come after a long, long time of punya. This is why Krishna says in chapter 7, text 28 of Bhagavad Gita, Yesham tuantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta. All the dvandva moha that clouds our minds like a computer desktop cluttered with too many icons. You know, our minds are full of everything except what it should be full of. And so, you know, we become full of all these mundane conceptions of life, and that includes all the anasuya and all the matsarya and all the desires and all the passion. But you can't be like that. You have to be shama if you're a brahmana. Now, Mahavrata, Dvarsha Brahmanasya. These are the 12 great vows taken by the brahmanas. Usually when we hear words like Brihadvrata and here it's stated Mahavrata, anybody know where Brihadvrata is mentioned? Canto 2, chapter 6, text number 20, it said, those who take the Brihadvrata, they go back to Godhead. Other people, not necessarily. What is that Brihadvrata? Such a big vow. Such a big vow that when one kshatriya took that vow, the heavens thundered with the name Bhishma. Brahmacharya. Celibacy. For men, not for women. For women, what do they have instead? Chastity. Pativrata. Pativrata. What does that mean? Here we have Mahavrata for the men. Control yourself. Mahavrata for the women. Fix your mind on your husband only. This is the tradition. So, and now Prabhupada, as he characteristically does in his purport, he brings it right down to ground level, and he talks about ISKCON. So he says, the European and American devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement are sometimes accepted as brahmanas. Sometimes. Usually, I have to say. But the so-called caste brahmanas are very much envious of them. Yes, it's true. I've met them. In answer to such envy, the Prahlad Maharaj says that one who has been born in a Brahmana family but is falsely proud of his prestigious position cannot even purify himself, not to speak of his family. Whereas if a Chandala, a low-born person, is a devotee and has fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord, he can purify his entire family. We have had actual experience of how Americans and Europeans, because of their full Krishna consciousness, have purified their whole families. So much so that a mother of a devotee at the time of her death inquired about Krishna with her last breath. Anybody know who this is? Mahatma's gone now. He would have known. Yeah? No. I don't know, maybe. But I think it was, what is his name now? Hundarika from Chicago. Anyway. The foolish accuse a devotee of following the principle of escapism, but actually the fact is that a devotee is the right person to elevate his family. A devotee engages everything in the service of the Lord, and therefore he is always exalted. So we have to take care of our parents also when we're old, and we have to elevate them. I did that with my mother, and when she passed away, I never could have imagined that she would have such an auspicious departure from this world. She was lying next to the Shalagram Shila. She had tulsi leaf on her tongue. We had sprinkled Braj Kiraj all over her body. And last thing she ate was sandesh offered at Balya Bhoga before Mangalarti to Rukmini Dwarkadish. And she was hearing Kirtan. My wife and I were sitting in the hospital. Practically, we were camped out there for 3 days, nonstop, taking shifts, doing Kirtan there. all the Filipino nurses, because every nurse in Southern California is Filipina. So they're all saying, it's very holy atmosphere in here. And if you have a bell near someone who's dying, that's also considered to be auspicious. We had, Pankajangri had done some Narasingha Puja in Mayapur. Giriraj Swami, he was also praying. And we knew what time she was leaving because we consulted the Pandit. And yeah, so she had a wonderful, very peaceful, smiling, no problems at all. At least she left this world. So only because, see, I came from Govardhan in 2006. I just thought I'm going to visit my mother. Long time I haven't seen her. So I took a suitcase, two weeks worth of supplies I took to America. And I went to visit her. But when I got there, I could see she actually was buri ho gayi. Just, you know, she had become old and she needed help. Then while I was there, she had a massive stroke and heart attack. And she was comatose actually. And the doctor said she's got minutes to live, days to live, maybe. So you better like have all your discussions now. Everybody came. I didn't have power of attorney. My sister did. But, you know, it was heavy. She was in the hospital and comatose for quite some time, many months. Finally, she came out of it, but she had to learn how to talk all over again. She had to learn how to walk all over again. She didn't know if it was day or night for a good year. And, you know, but hote, somehow or other gradually she became better, such that the doctor said, okay, she's convalescent now, you can take her home. But she's invalid, of course. And her memory was like 3 days maximum. Anything within the last 3 days, she didn't know it. Older than that, fine. This is how it happens. Keep it in mind when you get old. You lose your short-term memory. Did I just brush my teeth or not? These things happen. And, you know, it's very often that old people, they get dehydrated because they forget to drink water. You know, it's a problem. We can't foresee all these things. One of my godbrothers said, it's one thing to talk about death theoretically, it's another thing to hold a metal knife into a socket. So, you know, we don't really understand the full ramifications of this philosophy until we actually have to undergo all the things that we hear about. Anyway, so this is, you know, I took care of my mother and she became a little bit better, and I gave her plenty of association with Giriraj Swami, and Andraduna Swami used to take her to the Sunday feast. She couldn't remember anything. Every time she went, it was Krishna consciousness was an ever-fresh experience for her. But, you know, by the same token, every time if I took her shopping, I had to explain to her that very difficult conversation, why I can't buy you non-vegetarian things. That's a tough one. Why I have to take away your license now, because anyway, it's a long story. I don't want to dilate too much, but these are the qualifications, Mahavrata, these 12 things. If we embody these things, if we assimilate and exemplify these things also, then we can do some good for the world. And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu means when he says, Janma sartha kori, koraparupakar. First things first. We know, anybody knows South Asian language, you know you have subordinate verbs and finite verbs. So, you know, Janma sartha kori has to come first. You can't put that later. It has to come first. Then, Koraparupakar. What does Janma sartha kori? Make your life perfect. Get this internalized. Burn it into your chip, so to speak. Then you can do something for anybody else. Otherwise, the world is full of preachers who can't really help anyone, and they create a disturbance. Utpata iva kalpate, especially if they don't even know the Shastra that they would refer to them. So, anyway, these are some things we can think about here. Sridhar Swami has given his comments, as I said. He's quoting all the same verses. Sanatana Goswami, you know, everything we have actually from Srila Prabhupada, there's not a whole lot of need to, except unless we want to just confirm what we're hearing from Srila Prabhupada, but there is extensive commentary on these verses. I didn't have time, unfortunately, to really translate them all, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur usually sums everybody up, so I'll say, he says, Mm, and then we'll end. Kimadyat vaktavyam bhakti abhaya sadbhavabhyam evam vivichyata ityaha bhakti hinat vipradapi shwapacham varishtam manye kimuta kshatriyadibihi. So the same things that we're getting in Prabhupada's purports, actually, they're coming from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, what more can be said? One should consider that he says, I consider that a dog eater is superior to a Brahmin who doesn't have bhakti. What to speak of Kshatriyas and others? Now here's another thing that's in Prabhupada's purport. He says, this Brahmana who is proud, Bhudimana, he thinks he's big. He can't even purify himself. What to speak of his family? That's in the translation. Where is that in the verse? Can anybody tell me? It's not on the board anymore, but nobody has an answer. I'll give you the answer. It's not in the verse. It's not in the verse. So where's he getting it from? This is another thing we should consider, because it's very illustrative of how Srila Prabhupada understands Srimad Bhagavatam. His Grace, the late, great Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, wrote a very nice article about this principle of how to translate Gaudiya Vaishnava literature from Sanskrit. And he's emphasizing the role of the commentaries in Srila Prabhupada's purports. And this is why the BBT has always had a policy with its new translations that there has to be a commentary. You can't translate something and publish it for BBT unless there's a commentary. And if there isn't one, you have to write one. So, yeah, Buddhimana means he thinks he's big, but it doesn't actually say that he can't purify himself even. It doesn't say that. So where does Prabhupada get this? Prabhupada gets it from Sridhar Swami. And this is to illustrate the importance of these commentaries, because very often, I have to say, here in this case, some of what we've heard from the predecessor acharyas is put into brackets, but sometimes Prabhupada just fuses it with the commentary. And this is why we have Bhagavad Gita as it is, because everything Prabhupada is saying there, with rare exception, is just coming from his predecessor acharyas. And that is the way that Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita itself that the Bhagavad Gita has to be understood. Evam parampara prapsam ityadi. So, yeah, Sridhar Swami says that these qualities without bhakti produce only pride, all these 12 qualifications. If they're not given over to Krishna, you know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, tad buddhayas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayana ityadi. Everything you have to give it up for Krishna. So, yeah, Sridhar Swami says, the dog eater who has offered his mind, actions, and wealth, and words, and life, adi adi, to the Lord is superior. How is he superior? He purifies his whole family, whereas a person who is respected by the people does not even purify himself. You can get respect, my friends. Many of us do. But do you deserve respect? That only Krishna can judge. And we hear from the Shruti mantra, Nayam Atma. What is the verse, anybody? Pravachanena labhya, yes. Just by giving a brilliant lecture doesn't mean you're Krishna conscious. And just by having these 12 qualifications doesn't necessarily mean you're advanced. Even if you're striving to become a devotee, you have to be a little humble about this. That, maybe I have some, by my past karma, I may have something that people respect and think is Krishna conscious, but it's not necessarily so. Sometimes our congregational members are more advanced than we are. So, these are the things we can think about. There's so much more that we could say about these verses. Every one of them has extensive commentary. There's just not enough time to talk about it. In my opinion, it would be better to discuss one verse per day. But anyway, these are a few things we can talk about. It's getting late, so I should stop now. But if anybody has any questions or any comments, we can talk maybe a little further. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Yeah, Sridhar Swami also says, what to speak of a Brahmin who has only 7 or 8 or maybe 4 or 5 of these qualifications? Even if he has all 12, it's not enough. Okay, you had something?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful class. You mentioned about the quality titikshva. So you said that there is one tree and that was hit by how many times? 12 times. And
32 times.
32.
32. I
Yeah.
counted 32 limbs this tree has given.
Yeah, and so you gave this example in the light of titikshva. So how we can understand in our life?
Yeah. You go on Sankirtana, distribute books, and, you know, here if you give a lecture in the temple, everybody's going, oh, Prabhu, very nice, and they'll bow and they'll give you the garland, and you go on Sankirtana and talk to somebody, especially somebody who's from, I won't say a dog eater family, but a cow eater family, which is worse, you know, and see how far you get with them. They have no clue what's even desirable in life. So how can they understand who's respectable? We have this policy on Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. Nobody gets second initiation unless they perform Sankirtan for at least 6 months to a year. Because that will prove that you have the wealth. What is the wealth of the Brahmana? Austerity. And titiksha is necessarily there. Prabhupada always said, you don't have to do penances and austerities and difficulties and all these things artificially or apart from your service. All you have to do is preach Krishna consciousness, and zarur, you're going to have a hard time. Because, you know, this is a world in which everybody hates Krishna consciousness to one degree or another. So yeah, it's you know, just perform your duty. Just go out and preach and try to make yourself Krishna conscious also. Try to deal with each other appropriately, with the Vaishnavas at least. And it demands, naturally it demands titiksha. Okay? We don't need to do anything other than the very basic things that Prabhupada has given us, yes.
So how this titikshva and self-respect is like distinguished, means how we can like draw a line between having self-respect and tolerate as
abuse from others.
Yes, abuse.
Well, tolerance doesn't just mean tolerating abuse from other living entities. That's only adhibhotik klesha, right? What about your own senses? What about your mind? We discussed dhamma shama, right? These are also qualifications. We have to tolerate that also. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshnastu dukkha. I know about this. In Vrindavan, I mean, the reason I'm here right now is because I can't live there in April. The doctor told me, if you live here, you will die. Because the pollution mixed with the pollen, mixed with the construction dust and the ordinary dust, it's everywhere. Rajadulito hai. Lekin, you know, it's a bit much if anybody has respiratory problems. And, you know, but the extreme cold also, usually I go and preach in the south because I get sick. I've always had poor health. But these things have to be tolerated as much as possible. So tolerance isn't just, you know, dealing with people who are nasty to us. It means all these things. Sometimes we have to tolerate the instruction that we've been given. Sometimes the guru looks like our enemy. You know this, Nityananda Prabhu, correct? I tell this story all the time. I think everybody here knows. Guru may appear to be your enemy also. Why is this man checking me at every step? This is tolerance. Yeah, the intelligence is controlling this lower animal nature that we all have. What does one poet said? He's praising flowers in his poem. And he says, you obey your seasons and times, but I would have it ever spring. No thought of death, nor ever even think of such a thing. This is, you know, this is misuse of the human form of life. And it is the default in modern society. People assume this is what life is all about. Just enjoy to the max with no responsibility whatsoever. So, you know, And then you come and start introducing everything that opposes whatever is dear to them. Yes, of course you're going to have to practice some tolerance. Is that okay?
There's one more question, if it is
Yes.
fine with you.
I have time, but anybody who's hungry, go ahead.
There's one small question. You mentioned that our money is meant to be enjoyed by brahmachari and sannyasi.
This is Bhagavatam, Krishna tells us.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
So, and since nowadays education is so expensive and everything is like maintaining life is also too expensive. So how to let brahmachari and sannyasi enjoy our money if our kids needs?
Here's the thing. Somebody asked me last night also a very similar question. I mean, it's predicated on the same phenomenon that we live in a world that is maybe, certainly in modern society is antithetical to many of our principles. And the world in general is not always so supportive. So it's hard to juxtaposition our ideals from Shastra with our practical day-to-day necessities, correct? So in this and other ways, it is like that. You don't necessarily have to give up everything that you have for the sannyasis and the brahmacharis, but the principle on which you keep some of your assets, it has to be dharma. Dharma has to be the first consideration. And the example we see of this is Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. When he was confused about what to do in his material life, he's facing all of his friends and relatives, and he's supposed to fight with them and kill them. Can you imagine that? No. You can't. You've never had that experience, I assume. But the way he expressed his concern to Krishna was not with his own self-interest in mind. What did he say? If you were listening last night, I think I mentioned it. Or maybe I didn't, I don't remember. I've given so many lectures in the last month or so that they're all fused together. I don't remember where I am. Anyway, dharma samurha chetaha. He says, Krishna, this is me. Dharma samurha cheta. I'm totally bewildered about what to do. But the point for us to take here is that his concern was dharma. What am I supposed to do? He wasn't thinking about his sense gratification. I mean, in some ways, Prabhupada implies that. What use is the kingdom if there's no one to enjoy it with? So maybe it was mixed, or maybe it was supposed to appear mixed, but at least he was able to frame his question in terms of dharma, because that has to be our primary concern. Now, why am I saying this? Because once dharma is our primary concern in life, then everything else becomes very easy to deal with. Why? Because dharma is black and white. It's in the Shastra. And Krishna says in the end of chapter 16, how do you determine what to do, what not to do? Ya Shastra, what is that? Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te Karya Karya Vijanataha. Based on what the Shastra says. And the spiritual master is even better than that. Why? Because if something is not clear in the Shastra, who's going to explain it? The spiritual master will explain it. And you can ask questions, and he can interactive walking Shastra, you can say. So, yeah, this is why we have these things. Is that okay? All right, anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much. I really like the point you made about how Ugra Jati leads to Ugra Shraddha, Ugra faith, because depending...
you study chapter 17, first several verses,
yeah,
you'll see it.
And we see that people born in, materialistic families, they put their faith in money or in, their education or material connections. They don't put faith in Shastra, they don't put faith in God and devotees. So
think about the ramifications of this powerful statement that Krishna shares with Arjuna. Shraddhamayo yam purushaha. The living entity is made of his faith. That's what he is. We say anandamaya bhyasat, right? We're pleasure seeking, but Krishna says shraddhamaya bhyasat. He's chasing his faith always. People always do what they really believe in. That's why you don't necessarily listen to what people say. You listen to what they do. So shraddhamayo yam purusha. And if the yo yat shraddha sa evasa, he continues the same idea that whatever your faith is, that's what you are. And conversely, whatever you do, that's what your faith is. So it's something that we have to give more thought to. I said this last night. It's not enough. You can't skim through Prabhupada's books and get any real depth out of them that way. It doesn't help much. You have to think about what Prabhupada says. And if you're ready to do that, only a sattvic person can do that, actually. Only that person can be, shama in his mind enough that he can actually think deeply about what's being presented in Prabhupada's books. Every single sentence is such a tour de force that, it's amazing sometimes. Dharma was telling me, he's reading with a friend now, and he says just his experience of the potency of sadhu sangha is that the same purport that he might have slept through on his own, when he's reading with a friend, it opens up whole new vistas of, just pregnant with all possibilities, these purports. Wonderful, wonderful books of Srila Prabhupada. I'm always trying to encourage people should read these books, but so we have to think about Prabhupada's books, what they say, and then we get more out of them. And that's how they stay solidified in our own hearts, especially if we share what we hear with someone else. All right, I think it's time to go. Everybody's kind of gradually, one by one, the hungry ones are leaving, so. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.